This was the main topic of a live stream we had on August 9th, asking what is the likelihood that Facebook is contracting with banks to acquire your financial information? Can banks even give Facebook your financial information? And what sort of legal rights do you have to prevent this from happening? Basically, the Wall Street Journal came out with a large expose saying that Facebook has been trying to negotiate with banks for the acquisition of transaction data, according to what the Wall Street Journal said, and then what got picked up by a lot of different media companies and been written about over and over again, that Facebook wants access to your transaction and is offering banks in exchange more behavioral information. So basically, they want to exchange information with banks so that you could use their messenger application to actually transact, to not only buy things, but also get your balance, to see information about all transactions. They want you to use Messenger much more than just communication, but actually in the process of learning about what's inside your bank. So you can ask them, you can ask the automated bot, what's my balance, or what was my last 6 transaction, or obviously I lost my credit card. Anything that automated information can provide in exchange, offering the bank some personalized information about what you're doing. And it was trying to negotiate that, and the banks rebuffed it, basically walked away. One bank specifically walked away saying that they're concerned about privacy issue when it comes to Facebook. Now, when you read those articles, your first take on it is, well, it looks like the banks are looking out for us. They're concerned about our privacy. They don't want to share information with a social media platform. The truth is, once you get into the nitty-gritties and what the law actually says and what are the regulations that these banks are facing, and more importantly, what they're already doing, what information they're already providing Facebook with, not necessarily with your knowledge, and the kind of interaction our banking and credit card information has with Messenger as is, and plus with also Apple and Google to a far lesser extent, it doesn't look like the banks are looking out for you necessarily here. This is a negotiations. If you thought for a second the banks are walking away because they're not interested with Facebook, think again. They're in the process of negotiating because they've been offering and giving away your information for quite a while. Now, Facebook responded to it in a release saying, the articles are all false. That's not what we're doing. We are continuing what we have done all along, which is working with financial institutions, including banks, to provide for customer service through our Messenger app, basically allowing the banks to develop an automated bot on Messenger, so allows you to type in, I lost my card, or I have a question about my account, I've been closed out, or whatever it is, and the system automatically responds to it. And when it can no longer respond, it would kick you over to a live operator. And according to Facebook, that's all they're doing now. Said, well, that's interesting. Well, and there's already an automated bot in place that they've already had that communicates with the bank, and I can ask a certain question like, I forgot my password. Does Facebook still gain certain access to my information, or is it all just pure, oh, here's a link to follow, but I'm not getting any sort of information? So I started looking into it, and that led me to more press releases about the whole rollout of different relationship between financial institutions and Google and Facebook. And what you learn is that, yes, Facebook already has relationship. They already contracted with American Express, with MasterCard. They already contracted with PayPal for certain information. And in some respect, they already have access to your information. And I'll go through and I'll show you what's going on in a second here. I said, well, hold on a second. If they already have information, they want obviously more. They want more granular information about your transaction. But in some cases, they already have access to the ability to say, tell PayPal, send money to X, Y, and Z. Well, in sending it, does Facebook get any information about our balance? Do they know that I'm using a credit card on the other end, or there's balance in my account? How does it bounce back? What kind of confirmation it gets back, and what is it collecting? So I started looking into it, and I said, well, are these financial institutions allowed to share? Because they've been doing it, and I don't even know about it. I have PayPal, I have account in some of the banks they were talking about. So I started looking into it, and there are both federal and state laws about it. So let's take a look at a second at the federal law here. And it says, except that otherwise provided, you may not directly disclose information to a non-public third party, non-affiliated third party. Okay. Then it says, opt out. In general, a financial institution may not disclose non-public personal information to a non-affiliated third party. So this would mean that, let's say, Wells Fargo is not permitted to provide any of your personal information to PayPal unless such financial information that Wells Fargo clearly and conspicuously discloses to the consumer in writing or in electronic form or other form permitted by the regulation, that such information may be disclosed to such third party. As long as the bank lets me know that they're sharing my information before they're sharing my information, they can do that. They basically have to give me the option to opt out. They don't have to ask for my permission. In the event that I don't opt out within a specific period of time, which is I think around 30 days, they can share my information. What it ends up being, remember all those pieces of paper you get probably once a year from your credit card, from your bank, boring privacy policies or privacy practices they send you, and I can guarantee you throw them out just like me? If you don't read them, and you don't object to anything and tell your bank you want to opt out, they can then share your information with unaffiliated third parties, right? So whether or not it's PayPal or your bank, all they have to do is provide you notification of their intent prior to that. Say, well, that kind of sounds like the normal kind of nonsensical privacy policy that I've written for many websites and mobile apps that may make some sense because we're dealing with really very little private information, games and stuff like that. But this is financial. And when you write a normal one, you basically are writing categories. What's going on here? Do they have to tell you, look, we're about to share it with our information with Facebook, which is what PayPal did with your information? Do they have to tell you that? Well, no, they don't. Because under the Graham Leach, it says that what they have to provide you with information. This is categories, the kind of information we share. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what they're sharing, but the kind, categories, and the kind of third parties we're going to share it with. So don't say, look, we're going to share your account balance with Facebook. What they're going to say is we share some account information with certain third-party social media companies. So you're never really getting direct information. That's the only thing the federal law says. They need to give you prior notice, an opportunity to opt out, which I think is somewhere around 30 days, and some general categories of what they share and with whom they're sharing it with. So that's terrible, and that's been the basis of Facebook getting information from MasterCard, from Bank of America, and I'll show you what's going on, some of the privacy policy and how they applied and in what context they've been applying it for. Then you say, well, there must be better laws, because one of the things that's written into the federal law is that it doesn't preempt state laws, that state law can actually be more restrictive. So that's wonderful. Let's hope our states protect us. So then you start looking into the different states and you realize, thank God for California. So residents of California have it in there. The California Constitution protects the privacy of California citizens from unwarranted intrusion into their private and personal lives. California actually has privacy rights within their Constitution, something that is not really provided within the U.S. Constitution. It's built around based on some other provisions in the Constitution, but it's not as strong as it is in California. And as a result, California law actually says you cannot share any of our residents' information unless you get their permission first. So residents in California don't have to rely on federal law to get a notice that they have to opt out of. They actually have to receive a request from their banks, from their credit card company, authorizing it. They're an opt-in state, which is obviously wonderful because unless you actually respond, if you throw away all the notices, nobody gets access to your information. It's like, oh, incredible. I'm in Florida. Let me take a look what Florida says. And what does Florida says? And where is it now? I have to find exactly where it is. Form of opt-out notice to consumer and opt-out method. Basically,
that the licensee discloses or reserves the right to disclose non-public information. So it says that you must give a notice, a clear and conspicuous notice to each of its customers. Florida law is basically the same. It basically requires the banks to give us clear, conspicuous notice of it and an opportunity to opt out. And that's the state of the current law here. So when you hear about negotiations between Facebook and the banks, and you're thinking that the banks are on your side, they're protecting it, understand that they do not, depending on what state you're in, they may be able to share your information with completely third-party unaffiliated companies like Facebook, Google, Apple. They've been doing it all along, and we can talk about some of them, how they've been doing it all along, without really asking for your permission, unless you're in a state like California that has that right. Few states have that. Most states are opt-out, just like the federal government. The result is they can pretty much share the information as long as they send you that nonsensical privacy notices once a year that you're going to throw away. Then unless you read very carefully and you follow up and you actually provide an opt-out for that information for each one of your accounts, they can share your information now. So what's actually happening here is what you think is happening is not it. It's not the banks pushing off Facebook. Yes, they're concerned about the bad press, and they're right to. Today is not a great time to partner with Facebook about sensitive material. But these banks have been selling your information. They're negotiating, basically. If not Facebook, it's going to be with other companies. They're negotiating for the best chances. Why? Because they want access to the social media information, and they're willing to trade your transactional information for social media. The problem is right now Facebook is being scrutinized by the government and by just about every privacy company in the United States to make sure that they're not selling, reselling, using private information for marketing purposes. And the bank, and right now, Facebook, as it's negotiating with the banks, is telling the banks, because it's being scrutinized, we are not going to permit the accumulated information we provide you to be used for marketing. So today, the deal between Facebook and the banks is not advantageous enough for the banks. It's not that the banks are protecting your information. Today, what Facebook is offering is not advantageous enough because Facebook is worried about allowing the banks to use your social media information to then remarket their own services to it. As a result, today the deal is not in the bank's favor. But they've been willing to give away your information before. They can easily do that. Some banks have said we're not going to do it unless we first get your opt-in. But in most states, that's not required. Definitely something to be concerned about.
When the lights are out and you stumble in the dark, you kept pushing on, but then you went too far. When your ship has sailed and all your dreams are lost, everything is wrong, you feel like it's your fault.